Morning, Paul. How has Sami Niku handled his time out of the lineup, and what do you hope to see from him tonight?
Yeah, you know what? We've had a good group of guys that have practiced after or with the group. So he's got enough time out with the main group on the days we were able to practice that I think he should be right and ready. He's a puck moving defenseman, and this is going to be critical in here tonight against Montreal. Very, very quick forecheck and really good sticks. So having a guy that can make that 5 or 10 foot pass inside to relieve the pressure is going to be really, really important for us. So it's a good game for him to come back into.
We'll go next to Paul Friesen from the Winnipeg Sun. Go ahead, Paul.
Paul, when you play the Habs, it seems you give up about 4 a game on average. Now you've won your share too. Is it just the way these teams match up, or?
Yes, I think like there were 2 teams that in this division, being that I think we're the only team in the NHL that's not doesn't have a team in its natural division in this new alignment. So I didn't like our games against Calgary, and I don't like our games against Montreal historically, right? We don't see them that much. It's twice a year or 3 times a year. I like the way we've kind of been able to adjust against Calgary this year, having seen them more and then now. So I'm still going off 2 games from last year, and it seems like, I mean, we've had some tough nights against this team. They're different and we're different, but it's usually, you know, a high volume, high chance game going both ways. I don't look at them as that now. I think they're, you know, the stats will tell you they're a really strong defensive team and a really strong offensive team. I think we've got a better structure in place. I think our style has changed. I like our offensive style change. I think we've made a more significant change offensively this year than we have necessarily defensively. I think we're trying to score goals differently, and we've had some success with that. So I am looking forward to seeing hopefully some changes in that game. Not a lot of games you walk away from having played Montreal thought, boy, that was a really tight, well-played game by both teams. There were chances, but both teams played well. It seems to, devolve into a indescribable display of offense and risk. So I think both teams are going to be a little tighter here tonight.
We'll go next to Kelly Moore from CJOB. Go ahead, Kelly.
Hey, Paul, when you look at the stats, these 2 teams are so evenly matched, but in terms, in different ways, but in terms of 5-on-5, Montreal is really strong. What is it that they do that has allowed them to have the success they've had, particularly 5-on-5?
I think they've got a really defined game that's suited perfectly to their team. So they've got an awful lot of quickness and speed. So their transition game and their reads when to go to transition is very strong, right? So you'll see a lot of breakaways and odd man rushes against this team and broken plays where they get the puck and move it forward. They transition very quick. They seem to do 1 of 2 things in the offensive zone. They'll rip it at the net from anywhere. So they get a high shot volume team. And then they got a bunch of guys on the blue line that can pound the puck. So when they do go low to high, and their D shoot it, they've got net front traffic. And that's really where I think the game they put up 50 plus on us, they jumped on those loose pucks on those shots. They were lightning fast. And I didn't think we contained that very well. But I think they play the game that's very well suited to the team they have built, and that's where their strength is.
We'll go next to Jeff Hamilton from the Winnipeg Free Press. Go ahead, Jeff.
Hey, Paul, as impressive as Neal Pionk has been on the ice this season, and I'm not sure if you knew this, but he posted on social media that he just completed his business degree after 6.5 years. And what's it say about a guy given even the way the NHL is and the requirements needed off the ice that he's finishing something like that? Yeah,
that's a commitment, right? And that's, you said 6.5 years. I didn't know it was that long. The time cost of the NHL job for these guys, and then the physical cost. So you're thinking, the recovery that they need, that you've got way more guys in the NHL online playing video games than you do having taking classes. So that'll just give you a little insight into his personality, right? He's a preparer. He practices really hard every day to prepare for that next game. He has that capacity to kind of invest. So I think over the 1.5 years kind of that we've had Neal, he's invested in his career, his hockey, and you see it every day. He's so committed to his practice habits, to his body, to being a real fit guy, then that makes complete sense to me that he would be able then to transfer that to, you know, get off the couch because you got to study for an hour and a half, and then there's more to it, right? There's that kind of internal drive because he's in a situation in his life where he's makes a lot of money. He's gonna be okay. So he does this as an investment into his future. You'll find Neal when he's done playing hockey, I'm sure, running businesses and being a leader in the community, and that's all wired to his personality.
Next, Sarah Orlesky from TSN. Go ahead, Sarah.
Well, just going back to your comment about playing games against the Flames in Montreal, and you said that you guys are trying to score goals differently this year. Can you just expand on in what way you mean?
I just felt, one of the stats at one point last year is that we led the league in goals scored off the rush after gaining entry and not shooting the puck. And that sounds like a really good stat, but I think the number was 11, right? So we had 7, and then you're wondering, how many goals did you not score because you didn't shoot the puck, right? I felt we were really perimeter seam team. We were building kind of our offensive game through the neutral zone with the idea of creating an opening, which is wonderful, except that totally disappears in the playoffs. And it would be why we would get outshot regularly. Right? We just didn't shoot the puck much, but we were looking for something. And when it goes well, and there's a place for that, right? You don't want to take that completely away from your team. What we would like to do is drive the speed of the game through the neutral zone, that if we get entry, we still have the option to shoot the puck. It's a considered option, because I still think those seam plays, those late passes are still going to be there. And I think we've done a better job with that. We're a bit more direct with our offensive game. We are, so how we try to explain it, thinking like a shooter, playing like a shooter, and then making the decision at the time that whatever presents itself best. So there's more speed to our attack. We spend more time net front. We were getting more tip goals, more action around the net. And then we haven't lost that Blake Wheeler to Dubois backdoor goal either. So we've added a kind of a component to our offensive game that I didn't think was there for really 2 years.
We'll go next to Ken Weaver from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Weaver.
Well, will you use Sami the same way you did in practice yesterday, or will you see a little bit more movement with those two?
Yeah, movement, Ken. We'll start there, and then, but no problem putting him back on his natural side and having Bo and Mo go together. So we'll move those guys around a bit.
We'll go next to Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Sean.
Hey, Paul. Paul Stastny said something interesting about your coaching style and the way that you've evolved and handle players. And one of the interesting things he said is sometimes you'll take stuff and use it as a buffer. You'll take it to Wheeler, who will take it to Scheif, and then he'll take it to a young guy. I'm interested, is that a technique that you've used a lot over your career? Or is that pretty unique to this team and the players like Blake and Mark that you would be working these situations through?
No, it would be specific to what the idea was. So if I feel a young player is playing on the perimeter too much, and I need to get them involved in certain, that's almost a skill thing, right? So if it's a systems thing, a work ethic thing, if it's a group, it's a 5-man movement thing, then I'll deal directly with that with the player. But if it's a small skill thing, I ask the guys questions to learn from them. So it's not just Blake or Mark, but it would be anybody. You grab Paul and say, hey, look, this guy's getting jammed on the wall. Is that where you want him when you have the puck behind the goal? And he'd say, yeah, I like him there because I'm trying to make this play. So I'm learning from these guys, right? Every player is different. What they see at ice level is different than what I see at bench level. So if we're talking about a little bit of a positioning thing, and then there's sometimes where I feel maybe a young guy needs a little confidence booster. And it's so much more valuable coming from a player than I think it is coming from. I can, skate by. If I've been on a guy, I'll go to him and say, hey, kid, hang in there. This is all part of the program. But if you can get a more veteran player to skate by a guy and say, hey, hang in there, kid, you're doing all right. Or maybe you got to pick it up a little bit, whatever. I think there's way more weight to that. So I use that for information from players to tell me what they're seeing with this player. What are you seeing when you're watching this guy play? I got a whole bunch of guys in that room that love talking hockey, the specifics of little skill detail thing. It's not really what I do for a living as a head coach, right? That small area skill stuff, that's the player's domain, and that's kind of a skills coach domain. I'm trying to get 5 guys to move consistently together on the ice and understand what they're supposed to do. So use that to learn from the player, also to maybe get to a younger player in a different way where they can kind of feel support from their peer group.
And final question to Kelly Moore from CJOB. Go ahead, Kelly.
Hey, Paul, one of the things that came out of the Montreal media availability yesterday was the message, for whatever reason, was getting lost between Claude Julien and his players. And there was a statement made that it happens everywhere, where eventually you have to have a fresh message. So with the instances that you have gone through where you've been let go, how much has that made you better at interpreting when the message needs to be freshened up and how it needs to be freshened up?
Right. So we all have things that we believe in our game, those core principles of the way you want to see your team play. I find that the message has a tendency to get stale faster if it's always work harder. Right. If that's the only direction, and this is not a statement about what happened in Montreal. I have no idea. And I think their team plays really hard and really well, but there has to be more to the message than just, you guys got to compete harder. It can't be general. So if I feel at times that I'm getting big eyes in a video meeting and it's not really translating in the ice, you get really quick to be very, very specific about a piece to your game that they can understand. And you need to be able to recognize that and move it around, right? Identify the problem. So it's not the same message. You can't come in with these guys and say, hey, it's just, you got to play harder. You got to play harder. Some days that's it. Some days that's it. And you'll show it on we're just not competing at a high enough level to expect to win. But I guess I had an experience once, Kelly. I was at a rink when my kids were playing one day, and they were about 9 or 10. And there was a 12-year-old team in between periods, and I was just standing up by the glass, and the coach was just giving it to him, right? He's just up and down them. And I remember thinking, I have no idea what you're angry about. You're clearly angry about something about your team, but it's really, really general. You're not competing. You got to get your heads out of your butts. We got to try harder. Like, it's just, but he never gave them anything specific to what the problem was, right? Like, and that one really stuck with me. You wonder how many times when you start that message idea that it gets stale, that you become so general that they can't attach it to what you want them to fix. So in messages, I try to be very, very specific about what we're talking about so that they know, if you do this, we should have success. And then, they do the things you ask them to do and they don't have success, well, then they're going to look for a different specific thing to work on from a different guy.